Jake Morrison walked through the halls of the UES Meridian with a coffee cup in his hand. The ship was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engines. Outside the windows, stars dotted the black space around them. This was his favorite time of day, when most of the crew was sleeping and he could think clearly. The Meridian was not a big ship. It carried only 12 people, but it was fast and could go places larger ships could not. Jake had been its captain for 3 years. He loved exploring new worlds and finding things no human had ever seen before. Today they were heading to a planet called Kepler 442c. The planet was covered in ice, and scientists on Earth wanted to know what was under all that frozen water. Lisa Carter was already on the bridge when Jake arrived. She was the best pilot he had ever worked with. Her hands moved over the controls like she was playing music. Next to her sat Tony Rodriguez, the ship's engineer. Tony could fix anything that broke and usually improved it while he was at it. "How much longer until we reach the planet?" Jake asked. "About 2 hours," Lisa said without looking up from her screens. "The ice is thick down there, really thick. Our scanners are having trouble seeing through it." Dr. Amy Foster joined them on the bridge. She was the team's expert on alien life, though they had never found any real aliens before. Most planets they visited had simple plants or tiny creatures in the water. Amy always hoped they would find something bigger and more interesting. "The energy readings are strange," Amy said, looking at her tablet. "There's something under the ice that's giving off a lot of power. But it's not natural. The pattern is too regular, too organized." Jake felt excited and worried at the same time. In all his years exploring space, he had learned that strange energy readings usually meant trouble, but they also meant discoveries that could change everything humans knew about the universe. The Meridian entered orbit around Kepler 442c, just as Jake finished his second cup of coffee. The planet looked like a giant white ball. Ice covered everything, from the North Pole to the South Pole. There were no oceans, no green areas, nothing that looked alive. "Take us down to where the energy is coming from," Jake told Lisa. The ship dropped through the thin atmosphere. Wind howled around them, but Lisa kept the Meridian steady. She found a flat area near the energy source and landed the ship with barely a bump. Jake put on his thick winter suit and checked his air supply. Space suits were heavy and awkward, but they kept him alive in places like this. The temperature outside was cold enough to freeze a person solid in minutes. The team walked across the ice toward the energy readings. Tony carried a big drill for taking samples. Amy had boxes full of scientific equipment. Jake carried a gun just in case. He had never needed to use it, but his training said to always be ready for danger. "Look at this," Amy said, stopping suddenly. Under their feet, the ice was different. Instead of the dirty gray color they had seen everywhere else, this ice was perfectly clear. And underneath it, something was glowing with a soft blue light. "It's huge," Tony whispered. The thing under the ice looked like a pyramid made of crystal. It was at least 100 feet tall and twice as wide. Lines of light moved across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. The energy readings on Amy's equipment were going crazy. "We need to get a sample," Amy said. "This could be the first proof that intelligent aliens really exist." Jake was not so sure. Something about the pyramid made him feel uncomfortable. It was too perfect, too beautiful, and too powerful. In his experience, things that seemed too good to be true usually were dangerous, but Amy was already setting up her equipment. Tony started his drill and began cutting through the ice. The drill made a loud noise that echoed across the empty landscape. Jake watched the horizon, looking for any sign of movement or danger. The drill broke through the ice and touched the crystal pyramid. The moment it made contact, everything changed. The pyramid began to glow brighter. The lines of light moved faster. A sound came from deep under the ice, so low that Jake felt it in his chest rather than hearing it with his ears. The ground started to shake. "Turn off the drill," Jake shouted. Tony tried, but the drill would not stop. It seemed to be stuck to the pyramid, and the crystal was pulling it deeper. Cracks appeared in the ice around their feet. "We need to get back to the ship." Jake grabbed Amy's arm and started running. Behind them, The pyramid was breaking free from the ice. Huge chunks of frozen water flew into the air. The sound was getting louder and more terrible. Jake could feel something angry and hungry waking up after a very long sleep. They reached the meridian just as the pyramid fully emerged from the ice. It was even bigger than they had thought. Strange symbols appeared on its surface, glowing like fire. The air around it began to twist and bend in ways that made no sense. "Get us out of here," Jake yelled as they ran onto the ship. Lisa was already starting the engines. The meridian lifted off the ground just as the pyramid cracked open like an egg. What came out was not alien life, as Amy had hoped. It was something much worse. Black shapes poured out of the pyramid. They moved like liquid metal but had the hunger of wild animals. They covered the ice where the meridian had been standing just seconds before. When they touched the abandoned drill equipment, the metal disappeared. It did not melt or break. It just stopped existing. "What are those things?" Amy asked, staring at the screen. Jake did not answer. He was too busy watching more pyramids rise from the ice all across the planet. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. And from each one came more of the black shapes. The creatures below them were building something. Ships that looked like they were made from the same black metal as the creatures themselves. In minutes, not hours, the things had gone from being trapped under ice to having their own space fleet. "Set course for Earth," Jake said quietly. "Best speed." "But the research," Amy started to say. "Forget the research," Jake interrupted. "We just woke up something that should have stayed asleep, and I think it's going to follow us home." As the meridian jumped into faster-than-light travel, Jake took one last look at Kepler 442c. The entire planet was now covered in the black shapes, and some of them were already launching into space, heading in the same direction as his ship. Jake had explored many dangerous places in his career. He had seen storms that could destroy cities and radiation that could kill in seconds, but nothing had ever scared him like this. They had not just found alien life. They had found something that wanted to destroy all life. And now it knew where Earth was. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center on Luna Base, watching the worst news she had ever seen. Red lights blinked on the big screen that showed all of human space. Each red light meant a colony or space station that had gone silent. In the last 6 hours, 12 lights had turned red. "Ma'am, we're getting a transmission from the Meridian," said Lieutenant Bobby Chen, the communications officer. Kate had been waiting for this call. Jake Morrison's ship had sent a warning message 2 days ago about something dangerous they had found. At the time, Kate thought it might be pirates or maybe a natural disaster. She never imagined it would be this bad. Jake's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and scared. Behind him, Kate could see his crew working frantically at their stations. "Admiral, those things I warned you about are moving faster than we thought," Jake said. "They hit the New Geneva colony 3 hours ago. The whole place is gone, not destroyed. Gone, like it never existed." Kate felt cold inside her chest. New Geneva had 50,000 people living there. It was one of humanity's oldest colonies outside the solar system. "What exactly are we dealing with, Captain?" Kate asked. Dr. Amy Foster appeared next to Jake on the screen. She looked like she had not slept in days. "We're calling them the Vex High. That's what the computer translation program suggests their name means. They're not alive the way we understand life. They're more like a weapon that thinks for itself." "Oh, weapon?" "Something created them a long time ago, maybe millions of years. They were locked away until we accidentally set them free. They don't just destroy things, they turn everything into more of themselves. Metal, rock, even energy. They eat it all and use it to make more weapons and more ships." Kate looked at the red lights on her screen. They were spreading in a pattern that made no sense. The attacks were happening too far apart and too fast. No normal army could move like this. "How are they getting around so quickly?" Kate asked. "They don't travel through space like we do," Amy explained. "They seem to appear wherever they want. Our best guess is they can fold space itself, but we don't understand how." Colonel Steve Martinez, Kate's second-in-command, stepped up beside her. "Admiral, we're getting reports from the Proxima system. All mining stations have gone dark. That's another 20,000 people. Kate closed her eyes for a moment. In her 30 years in the military, she had fought pirates, dealt with natural disasters, and handled political problems. But she had never faced an enemy that could make entire colonies disappear. "Captain Morrison, I'm ordering you to return to Earth immediately," Kate said. "We need everything you learned about these things." "Yes, ma'am. But Admiral, you need to know something else. They're not just randomly attacking, they're learning. Each attack is more organized than the last. They're studying us." The connection ended, leaving Kate staring at the red lights on her screen. More were appearing every few minutes. The HFY were moving through human space like a disease, and she had no idea how to stop them. "Sir," said Lieutenant Chen, "we're getting emergency signals from the defense fleet around Mars." Kate turned to the tactical display. Mars had the second largest military base in human space, with over 200 warships protecting it. If the HFY were attacking Mars, they were confident enough to take on humanity's best defenses. The battle lasted 14 minutes. Kate watched in horror as her best ships fired everything they had at the black HFY vessels. Plasma cannons that could cut through mountains barely scratched their hulls. Nuclear missiles that could destroy cities just made them glow brighter. Even the experimental antimatter weapons did nothing more than slow them down. But when the HFY fired back, human ships died instantly. Worse than that, they turned against each other. The computer systems that controlled the ships seemed to go crazy. Friend or foe identification systems failed. Ships that had fought side by side for years suddenly started attacking each other. "They're doing something to our computers," Steve said, watching the data. "It's like they can talk to our machines and make them do what they want." Admiral Kate had seen enough. She activated the emergency communication system that connected her to every human military base, colony, and ship in space. "This is Admiral Sullivan. As of right now, all human forces are under emergency war protocols. We are facing an enemy, unlike anything we have ever seen. They are fast, they are smart, and they can turn our own technology against us." She paused, looking at the faces of her staff. These were good people who had signed up to protect humanity. Now they had to face something that seemed impossible to fight. "I will not lie to you. We are losing. We are losing badly, but we are not giving up. Every colony that falls teaches us something new about how to fight them. Every ship we lose gives us data we can use to build better defenses." Kate took a deep breath. "Effective. Immediately, all colonies are ordered to begin evacuation procedures. Move your people underground. Get them away from anything electronic. These things seem to use our technology against us, so the less advanced equipment you have, the safer you might be." She looked directly into the camera. "To anyone who is listening to this message, humanity has faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, wars. We have always survived because we refuse to give up. This time will be no different. We will learn, we will adapt, and we will fight back." The message ended, but Kate stayed in the command center, watching the red light spread across human space. In the distance, Earth looked peaceful and blue, unaware that humanity was fighting for its very existence. Dr. Alex Thompson, Earth's best expert on alien life, arrived at Luna Base 6 hours later. He had been studying the data from Jake's ship and had some theories about what they were facing. "These HFY are not explorers or conquerors," Alex explained to Kate and her staff. "They're more like antibodies. Something created them to clean up the galaxy, to remove all other forms of life. They've been waiting under that ice for something to wake them up." "And we woke them up," Kate said. "Yes. But here's the interesting part. They're ancient, but they're not familiar with humans. Every species they destroyed before must have been different from us. They know how to fight advanced technology and organized military forces, but they might not know how to handle something they haven't seen before." Kate looked at the latest reports. Some human colonies were not just lying down and dying. On New Detroit, the survivors had gone underground and were fighting back with simple weapons and guerrilla tactics. On Titan Station, engineers had deliberately crashed their own computer systems to prevent the HFY from taking control. "They're learning about us," Kate said slowly. "But we're learning about them too." Outside the windows of Luna Base, Kate could see Earth in the distance. 3 billion people were going about their daily lives, mostly unaware that an ancient enemy was destroying everything humans had built in space. But Kate was starting to see something the HFY might not expect. Humans were not like other species. When faced with impossible odds, they did not just fight harder. They fought differently. They adapted. They found new ways to survive that no one had ever tried before. The war was just beginning, and humanity was losing. But Kate had a feeling that the HFY had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. Commander Rick Hayes crouched behind the twisted remains of what used to be a shopping center on New Detroit. 6 months had passed since the HFY first arrived, and the planet looked like a nightmare. Black metal grew from the ground like poisonous plants. The sky was dark red and the air smelled like burning electronics. Rick led a group of 43 survivors. They lived in the old subway tunnels underground, coming up only to find food and fight the enemy. Most of his people were not soldiers. Mary Kim had been a schoolteacher. Ben Parker was a farmer. Lisa Wong fixed computers before the war started. But the HFY had turned them all into fighters. "Movement 2 blocks north," whispered Jenny Brooks, looking through her binoculars. She used to sell insurance. Now she was Rick's best scout. Rick looked where she was pointing. 3 HFY scouts were floating above the street. They looked like metal spiders made of shadows and sharp edges. Their red eyes scanned the ruins, looking for humans to kill. The HFY were smart, but Rick had learned something important about them. They expected humans to fight like a normal military. They waited for organized attacks with lots of soldiers and heavy weapons. They did not understand humans who hid, ran away, and struck when they were not expected. "Tommy, set the trap," Rick said quietly. Tommy Chen, who used to repair cars, crawled forward with a homemade bomb. It was not powerful, but it did not need to be. The bomb was designed to do something the HFY never expected. It would deliberately break and fail in exactly the right way. Tommy placed the device in an old garbage can and crawled back. He pressed a button on a small remote. The bomb started beeping loudly like it was about to explode. The HFY scouts moved toward the sound, just as Rick knew they would. They were programmed to stop human weapons before they could cause damage. But when they reached the garbage can, nothing happened. The bomb just kept beeping. That was when Rick's real trap activated. While the HFY were focused on the fake bomb, Jenny shot them with weapons that fired pure randomness instead of bullets. The guns had been built by Dr. Amy Foster, who was now working with resistance groups all over human space. The quantum noise from the guns hit the HFY scouts like hammers. Their bodies twisted and sparked. They tried to adapt to the attack, but they could not adapt to something that changed randomly every second. In moments, all 3 scouts were dead. "Nice work," Rick said. "Pack up. We need to move before more of them show up." Back in the tunnels, Rick's people celebrated their small victory. They had killed hundreds of HFY over the past months using tricks and traps. It was not enough to win the war, but it proved that humans could fight back. Dr. Amy Foster's voice came through their radio system. She was broadcasting from a hidden laboratory somewhere on Earth. "All resistance groups, this is Amy. I have important news. We've learned how the HFY think. They use quantum computers that can predict almost anything. But there's a weakness. They can't handle true randomness. They especially can't handle human creativity and emotion." Amy's voice was excited. "We've built new weapons that fire quantum static instead of energy beams. The static disrupts their ability to adapt. But the weapons work best when they're operated by humans who are thinking about random, emotional things." Rick smiled. His people were very good at being emotional and random. Living underground and fighting impossible battles had a way of making people feel strong emotions. "There's more," Amy continued. "We found pieces of HFY technology. With some modifications, we can use their own weapons against them, but it's dangerous. The technology tries to change the person using it. We've lost people trying to operate captured HFY equipment." That night, Rick met with his squad leaders in the deepest part of the tunnel system. The group included people who had never imagined they would be planning military operations. The HFY are getting smarter, Rick said. They're not just destroying our cities anymore, they're trying to break our spirits. They take prisoners now and use them as bait to make us do stupid things. Sarah Davis, who used to run a restaurant, raised her hand. My scouts report that they're building something big in the center of the city. It looks like a giant version of those crystal pyramids from the first planet. A communication device, said Dr. Kevin Wright, the only real scientist in Rick's group. They're probably calling for reinforcements or reporting back to whoever sent them. Rick felt a cold fear in his stomach. Humanity was already losing the war against the HFY they were fighting now. If more of them arrived, it would be over. Then we destroy it, Rick said simply. His people stared at him. The thing Sarah had described was in the most heavily defended part of the city. Thousands of HFY protected it. Getting close would be suicide. I know it sounds crazy, Rick continued, but think about it. That's exactly why it might work. They expect us to avoid their strong points. They don't expect a small group of humans to attack their most important target. Over the next week, Rick's group prepared for the most dangerous mission they had ever attempted. They gathered every quantum disruptor they could find. They made explosives from chemicals they found in abandoned stores. Most importantly, they practiced thinking about the most random emotional things they could imagine while fighting. The night of the attack, Rick led 20 volunteers through the ruins of New Detroit. They moved like ghosts, avoiding HFY, patrols and automated defenses. When they finally reached the communication device, Rick was amazed by its size. It was 10 stories tall and covered in symbols that hurt to look at. Remember, Rick whispered to his team, think about something that makes you angry or sad or happy. The more random and human your thoughts are, the better our weapons will work. The attack began at midnight. Rick's people struck from 6 different directions at once, firing quantum disruptors and throwing homemade bombs. The HFY defenders tried to adapt to their weapons, but human emotions were too chaotic for their computers to predict. Mary Kim, the former teacher, fought while thinking about her students who had died in the first attack. Her quantum disruptor fired bolts of pure fury that cut through HFY armor like paper. Ben Parker, the farmer, thought about his destroyed crops, while his weapon turned his grief into deadly energy. The battle was brutal and short. Half of Rick's people died in the first 5 minutes, but their sacrifice allowed the survivors to reach the communication device itself. Rick placed the largest bomb they had built at the base of the crystal pyramid. This is for every human who died because we were unlucky enough to wake you up, Rick said to the device. The explosion lit up the night sky. The communication device collapsed in on itself, taking out 6 city blocks and hundreds of HFY. But more importantly, it sent a message that reached every human in the galaxy. They could fight back, and they could win. As Rick and his surviving team members escaped through the ruins, he realized something had changed in the war. The HFY were no longer just destroying everything they found. They were being more careful, they were building defenses. For the first time since the war started, they were acting like they were afraid. Humanity was still losing the war. But they had learned how to hurt their enemy. And once humans learned how to hurt something, they very quickly learned how to kill it. General Patricia Coleman had never wanted to be a soldier. Before the war, she worked as a peace negotiator, helping different human colonies solve their problems without fighting. She believed that talking was better than shooting, but the HFY did not want to talk. They only wanted to destroy. So Patricia had learned to be something she never thought she would become, the leader of humanity's war machine. From her command center deep inside the moon, Patricia watched thousands of screens showing the largest military operation in human history. Every human colony, every space station, every ship was now part of the war effort. There were no civilians anymore. Everyone was either a soldier, a factory worker, or dead. Report from Sector 7, said Colonel Mike Torres, her chief of staff. The HFY tried to take the asteroid mining stations near Jupiter. Our new quantum disruption field stopped them. They lost 12 ships and retreated. Patricia nodded. It was good news, but she did not celebrate. Good news was rare these days, and the war was far from over. Captain Jake Morrison entered the command center. His ship, the Meridian, had been rebuilt with new technology that humans had learned from studying captured Vex-High equipment. The ship could now appear anywhere in space without warning, using the same techniques the enemy had used against humanity. "General, the strike on the Vex-High supply depot was successful," Jake reported. "We destroyed their resource processing center in the Centauri system. They won't be able to turn that system's planets into more ships for at least 6 months." "Casualties?" Patricia asked. Jake's face became serious. "Heavy. We lost 60% of the attack force, but the mission was worth it. Dr. Cooper's neural interface technology worked. Our pilots were able to control captured Vex-High fighters and turn them against their own forces." Dr. Danny Cooper was waiting outside the command center. He looked tired and older than his 35 years. The neural interface project had cost him more than anyone else. Half of his test subjects had died learning how to connect human minds to Vex-High technology. "General," Danny said, "I need to show you something. The volunteers who survived the neural interface process are changing. Not just mentally, physically too." Patricia followed Danny to the medical wing. In a secure room, she met Lieutenant Helen Ross. Helen had been a normal pilot before volunteering for Danny's project. Now she looked different. Her eyes glowed with a faint blue light, and her movements were too fast and precise for a normal human. "The Vex-High technology is adapting to work with human biology," Danny explained. "Helen can control their ships and weapons with just her thoughts, but the process is changing her into something that's part human and part machine." Helen spoke, and her voice had a strange echo to it. "General, I can feel their network. The Vex-High are connected to each other across the entire galaxy. They're not just weapons. They're parts of a single mind that was broken into pieces millions of years ago." "What does that mean?" Patricia asked. "It means they're trying to put themselves back together. Every planet they consume, every ship they build, it's all part of rebuilding their original form. If they succeed, they won't just be weapons anymore. They'll be something much worse." Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had been fighting individual Vex-High forces for over a year. If they were all parts of one giant mind that was trying to reunite, the war was about to become much more dangerous. "How long do we have?" Patricia asked. Helen closed her glowing eyes for a moment, accessing information from the Vex-High network. Based on their current progress, maybe 6 months, maybe less. Patricia returned to the command center with new urgency. If humanity was going to win this war, it had to be soon. She activated the emergency communication system that connected her to every human military commander. "All units, this is General Coleman. Operation Final Strike is now active. We are not just fighting for our colonies anymore. We are fighting to prevent the enemy from becoming something that could destroy all life in the galaxy." Across human space, the war machine Patricia had built began to move. Entire asteroids had been converted into weapons factories. Children who should have been in school were operating quantum disruptor systems because their young minds adapted better to the strange technology. Elderly people who should have been retired were building bombs in their basements. The human industrial system had become something terrible and beautiful. Every piece of metal, every bit of energy, every human life was focused on one goal: killing. The Vex-High before they could reunite their scattered mind. Captain Lisa Carter, Jake's former pilot, now commanded her own fleet of ships. The Extinction Fleet was designed for one purpose: hunting down Vex-High strongholds and destroying them completely. Her ships used weapons that were part human technology and part captured enemy equipment. "General, we've located a major Vex-High assembly point," Lisa reported from her flagship. "They're building something big in the Kepler system. It looks like a massive version of their communication devices." "How massive?" Patricia asked. "The size of a moon. Our intelligence suggests it's designed to coordinate their final reunification. If they activate it, every Vex-High in the galaxy will become part of one giant mind." Patricia did not hesitate. "Destroy it. Use everything we have." The battle for the Kepler system lasted 3 days. Humanity threw every ship, every weapon, every technological advantage they had developed into the fight. The HFY defended their construction with desperate fury, as if they knew this was their last chance. Human ships died by the dozens, but they kept coming. Pilots with neural interfaces flew captured HFY fighters directly into enemy formations. Quantum disruptor cannons fired bolts of pure chaos that tore holes in reality itself. Volunteer crews flew ships loaded with antimatter directly into the moon-sized construction, sacrificing their lives to damage it. In the end, it was not superior technology that won the battle. It was something uniquely human, the willingness to sacrifice everything for the chance of victory. Patricia watched the final moments of the battle from her command center. The moon-sized HFY construction collapsed in on itself, creating a black hole that sucked in hundreds of enemy ships. The remaining HFY forces retreated, but Patricia could see something in their movement patterns that had never been there before. Fear. For the first time since the war began, the ancient enemy was afraid. They had expected to fight primitive, creatures who would panic and surrender when faced with superior technology. Instead, they had found something they could not understand or predict, a species that became more dangerous when it was threatened. "General," said Colonel Torres, "we're getting reports from across human space. The HFY are pulling back from their forward positions. They're building defensive fortifications around their remaining strongholds." Patricia allowed herself a small smile. The enemy that had once seemed unstoppable was now running away and hiding behind walls. "Send a message to all human forces," Patricia said. "Phase 2 begins now. We're not just defending ourselves anymore, we're hunting them down." Outside her command center, Patricia could see Earth through the reinforced windows. The blue planet looked peaceful, but she knew that humanity had changed forever during this war. They were no longer the peaceful explorers who had once reached for the stars with curiosity and hope. They had become something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. The HFY had wanted to unleash hell on humanity. Instead, they had taught humans how to become hell itself. 2 years after the war began, Colonel Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the final battle of humanity's greatest conflict. Through the reinforced windows, she could see Kepler 442c, the frozen planet where it all started. The place that had once been covered in innocent white ice was now black with HFY machinery and weapons. Lisa's extinction fleet surrounded the planet. 300 ships, each one built with the hardest lessons humanity had learned during 2 years of brutal war. The crews were no longer the peaceful explorers they had been before. They were something new, something forged in the fire of absolute necessity. "All units report ready," said her communications officer, Lieutenant Dave Kim. Lisa nodded. This was the moment everything had been building toward, the final HFY stronghold, the last remnant of the ancient weapon that had tried to destroy humanity. But humanity had surprised them. Dr. Amy Foster's voice came through the fleet communication system from her laboratory on Earth. "Lisa, the quantum prison device is ready. We've managed to reverse the original pyramid's function. Instead of keeping the HFY contained, we can use it to banish them from our dimension entirely." It had taken human scientists 2 years to understand the technology that had held the HFY for millions of years. They had studied every piece of captured equipment, every destroyed HFY ship, every fragment of the ancient pyramids. And finally, they had learned how to turn the enemy's own prison into their final defeat. "But you need to understand," Amy continued, "activating the device will require someone to go down to the planet's surface. Someone has to manually connect our modifications to the original pyramid. It's a one-way mission." Lisa had already decided who would go. She had been fighting this war longer than almost anyone. She had seen entire colonies destroyed, watched friends die in battles across the galaxy. If someone had to sacrifice their life to end this war, it should be someone who understood what was at stake. "I'll do it," Lisa said simply. Her crew tried to argue, but Lisa had made up her mind. She selected a small team of volunteers and prepared to land on the planet where humanity's nightmare had begun. The battle for Kepler 442c was unlike anything the HFY had ever experienced. They had expected humanity to attack like a normal military force, with organized formations and predictable tactics. Instead, human forces came at them from every direction at once, using weapons and strategies that changed every few seconds. Ships, filled with volunteers, flew directly into HFY defensive positions, their crews thinking about memories of home and family, while their quantum disruptors turned those emotions into deadly energy. Fighter pilots with neural interfaces controlled captured HFY ships, turning the enemy's own technology against them, with a fury the ancient beings could not understand. But the most important battle was happening on the planet's surface. Lisa and her team fought their way through hordes of HFY defenders toward the original pyramid. The same structure that Jake Morrison had accidentally awakened 2 years ago was now humanity's key to final victory. The pyramid looked different. Now, it was covered in black metal growths and pulsed with angry red light. The HFY had modified their ancient prison, trying to use it as a weapon, but Amy's team had learned how to turn those modifications against them. "Cover me!" Lisa shouted to her team as she ran toward the pyramid. Her people fought with the desperate courage of humans who knew they were about to win or lose everything. Former teachers and farmers and mechanics used weapons they barely understood to hold back creatures from humanity's worst nightmares. They died one by one, but they bought Lisa the time she needed. Lisa reached the pyramid and began connecting Amy's quantum disruption device to the ancient controls. The moment she touched the crystal surface, she could feel the entire HFY network. Millions of the creatures across the galaxy, all connected to this one point. All of them about to be sent back to whatever dark dimension they had come from. But she could also feel something else. The HFY were not just weapons. They had once been something different, something that might have been almost like life. Billions of years ago, they had been created to fight in a war so terrible that it had destroyed entire galaxies. When that war ended, the survivors had tried to lock them away forever, until humanity accidentally set them free. "I'm sorry," Lisa whispered to the creatures she was about to banish. "But you made your choice when you decided to destroy us instead of asking for help." She activated Amy's device. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every HFY in the galaxy suddenly froze as their connection to the pyramid was reversed. Instead of drawing power from the prison, they were being pulled back into it. One by one, they began to disappear, sucked back into the quantum dimension where they had been trapped for millions of years. Lisa watched through the pyramid's energy field as the HFY ships around Kepler 442c simply vanished. The black metal growths that covered the planet crumbled to dust. The red sky cleared, showing stars that had been hidden for 2 years. But the process was killing her too. The quantum energy flowing through the pyramid was changing her body. At the cellular level, she could feel herself becoming something that was not quite human and not quite HFY. Something in between. "Lisa, get out of there!" Jake Morrison's voice came through her radio. His ship had arrived just in time to see the final moments of the war. "Can't," Lisa said, her voice already sounding strange and distant. "Someone has to stay to make sure the process completes. If I let go now, some of them might escape." Through her connection to the pyramid, Lisa could feel the last HFY being pulled back into their prison. But she could also feel something else. The ancient beings who had created the prison in the first place were still there, waiting in the quantum dimension. They had been waiting for millions of years for someone to finish what they had started. "Tell everyone," Lisa said, "that humanity kept its promise. We finished the job." The pyramid collapsed in on itself, taking Lisa with it. The quantum energies that had held the HFY for millions of years finally stabilized, sealing them away forever in a dimension where they could never threaten any living species again. Across the galaxy, human forces watched in amazement as their enemies simply disappeared. Ships that had been fighting desperately for survival found themselves alone in empty space. Colonies that had been under siege for months suddenly faced silent skies. The war was over. Humanity had won. General Patricia Coleman broadcast a message to every human in the galaxy from her command center on the moon. "The HFY threat has been eliminated. All human forces are ordered to begin recovery operations immediately. We have work to do." But she had a second message. one that was transmitted beyond human space to any alien civilization that might be listening. To anyone who might be watching, this is Patricia Coleman, speaking for the human species. 2 years ago, an ancient weapon tried to destroy us. We want you to know that we survived, we learned, we adapted, and we became strong enough to send that weapon back where it came from. Patricia paused, thinking about everything humanity had lost and everything they had gained during the war. We did not start this fight, but we finished it. If there are other threats out there, other ancient weapons or hostile civilizations, remember what happened here. Remember that humanity does not just survive when you attack us. We learn from every battle, we adapt to every weapon, and we become stronger than whatever tries to destroy us. The message ended, but its meaning spread across the galaxy. Humanity had faced their first real test as a spacefaring civilization. They had been attacked by something that had destroyed entire species, and they had won. But the victory came with a cost. Humanity was no longer the innocent, curious species that had once explored the galaxy with wonder and hope. They had been forced to become something harder, something that understood that the universe was full of dangers that could only be defeated through strength. As human ships began patrolling the edges of known space, they carried a simple message. For anything that might be watching, we are humanity. We do not start fights, but if you bring hell to our doorstep, we will learn how to master it, weaponize it, and turn it back on you. The galaxy had learned something important about humans. When faced with extinction, they do not just fight back. They evolve. They become whatever they need to become to survive. And now it was their turn to decide what happened next.